I don't think so. All right, that's good. Means we're doing a good job, Josh. So yeah, so I just want to look at some notes again. My vol crush, that was it really, 40% credit. We're talking about max profit. Weekly options, again, those others can be tested as well. I start out with that screener fairly wide, but the only reason I do that is because I want to get a big list of stocks, and then I can break them down, based on expected move and other different screeners that I might want to use. So now we're talking about a bullish runner. So like Josh had mentioned previously, the bullish pre-runners, bearish pre-runners, those are all stocks that you're going to trade coming into the earnings announcement. The bullish runner and the bearish runner are on the opposite side or on the other side of the earnings. So we're looking at stocks that typically have earnings come out, and then no matter what the earnings are, or maybe they always have good earnings, but after that, people just want to buy the stock. So that stock is typically going to go up in price after earnings. So that's our bullish runners. So institutions expect some stocks to have a large price increase after a positive earnings report, and that's going to lead to major buying pressure right after the earnings announcement, and the stock typically pushes higher. Delphian calls this a bullish runner strategy, and your price typically increases from 1 to 20 days after earnings. So just like on the bullish pre-runner, we're looking 20 days to about 5 days ahead of earnings. Now we're looking for stocks that move from 1 day after earnings up to 20 days after earnings. And again, some stocks might keep going that 20 days after. And if you test it and it shows those positive results, by all means, put that in place and have that trade as part of your plan if you want to do so. The bullish runner strategy captures 25% to a 50% gain for a long call within that 20-day window after the earnings announcement. And the trade's going to be closed if either the profits met, the stop loss is met, or a time stop of 20 days after the earnings release. The long call is typically going to be your best strategy for the bullish runner. So if the stock moves up, you're typically going to find the best value out of a long call option based on that return. So the long call is definitely the primary strategy that we use. But if you want to test other strategies that you think might fit your risk profile a little bit better, then by all means, there's other strategies that can be tested too. So I think we've talked about them before. You can look at some of those like like the bull put spread. You could test a strategy like that and see if it offers more profit, or if it might offer less risk, and that's what's going to make you more comfortable trading it. So some of the credit strategies like naked puts and the bull put spreads, like I just talked about, you can try them out, but I want you to test them first and get some good numbers behind what you think is going to happen, and that'll kind of set some more confidence in your trading. And then always remember, selling naked options, you got to make sure you have to know the risk that you're taking on when you're selling those naked options, whether it be calls or puts. Trading strategy setup similar to what we looked at earlier with a bullish pre-runner, a long call, except here we're entering in the 1 day after earnings, and we're going to hold it or exit 20 days after earnings. 25% profit, 100% stop loss, and 60 days to expire using the monthly options, and we're using a delta of 30. As was mentioned earlier, you can adjust the stop loss to be a 50% stop loss. I like to start at 100% and then get a list of, let's say, 50 stocks. And then if I want to tighten up that list to maybe a list of 10, now let me drop my stop loss down to 50. And now my list is going to get smaller. But if I start at a low stop loss or a tight stop loss, I might not get any symbols, and then I have to work my way backwards. So I typically start at 100 and move it down that way. Same thing with my profit target. I'll start at 25% profit target, and if I get a big list of stocks that meet that easily, then maybe I'll say, okay, well, what if I tried a 40% profit target, and so on and so forth. And those are just different ways that you can use Delphian to test strategies and test strategies on symbols differently and find some really great trades. How to find these candidates. So similar to the one we talked about earlier, close 20 days after. I want it to be greater than 3%, and I want it to happen 7 out of the past 10 earnings, at least 7 out of the past 10 earnings. So I'm looking for a stock that moves at least 3% to the upside, 7 out of the past 10 earnings. So I use advanced micro devices here. We can see earnings. After earnings, stock went up. after earnings here, stock dropped down a little bit, but then it actually did shoot up. Here, stock dropped down and pretty much went sideways, so probably a loser on this trade. Here, earnings, stock went up and actually kept moving up. So I think Ram or somebody else had a chat earlier about scaling out of a position. So long calls, long puts, I feel are great trades that you can use that scale out approach with, but you want to test it. If it works at 25%, 100% of the time, how about 50%? How about 100%? And if it does work, then maybe, you know, AMD is a stock that you want to use that scale out approach with. But again, like Josh had mentioned, you want to make sure that the risk you're taking on is fairly level with most of the other strategies that you're using. Because if you're not, some of those losses on some of the other ones where you're taking more risk could really skew what the other results are showing. So always keep that in mind. Advanced Micro Devices, the trade 10. So actually, I thought this trade right here would be a loser, but maybe, so that's going to be our second trade, which would be trade 9. We can see here it actually shows a positive result of $19. Not much based on the 281, but it did hold it it looks like it held it probably for the entire 20 days. So I'd have to look at that a little more in detail to see, but we might have got out on one of these little spikes up here. So, but you can see all of our results with the entry. Here's my graph, 100% win rate on AMD, a profit factor of 956. And the reason the profit factor is so high is because my win rate's 100%. I didn't take a loss. So you're going to see a $956 profit factor. You got some big winners here, this one and this one. So those are ones maybe that we could have used that scale out approach on, but some of the other ones you can see are pretty minimal, but still, you know, if I can make, you know, a good profit of $59 off of a $104 trade, you know, that's great. I'm only using one contract here, but you would know that if you wanted to trade around $1,000, okay, well, I could do 10 contracts and I'd be risking, you know, $1,040, and then instead of making $40, I would make, you know, $400 profit. So you can just make that you can make your own analysis based on the contract size that you would want to trade, or the risk amount dollar-wise that you would want to trade. So with this trade, like we talked about, we're looking 1 to 20 days after earnings. So you want to test it. I mean, day 1, day 2, day 3, what happens on each of those days? So the most optimal time frame for this AMD Bullish Runner trade is to enter the long position the day after earnings and get out 16 days after, 16 trading days after. So if my profit hasn't been hit or my stop loss, which typically won't because I have 100% on this one, I want to make sure I'm out 16 trading days after the earnings announcement. What I wanted to show you and was mentioned earlier is the virtual portfolio. So what I did was you can see the date here within the system. This is a snapshot of the actual platform. On 7/29, I entered into this AMD trade. And the reason I use 7/29 is if I go back, you can see the entry for this particular trade here was on 7/29. So this entry, if I wanted to paper trade it in the virtual portfolio, this is what I'm using right here, this entry date here. So on that date, I would get an alert for the Bullish Runner trade. And when I did, I would actually come into my virtual portfolio. I'm using a portfolio value of $100,000. You can set this up for any dollar amount, and you can set up as many different virtual portfolios in the platform as you would like to test as many strategies as you want. I'm using this AMD, and I'm using this option. I ran a more detailed back test on my side to find the actual option that it used when it sent that alert out. And this is the option it used. It was going to buy the October 16th $85 call, and it was going to use that option. The bid ask on that option at that time was $4.20 to $4.35. I use a mid price when I put stuff in to my back test or in the virtual portfolio. So it's using $4.28 here as the mid price. Within the virtual portfolio, and you're putting this trade in, you get to see the delta of the stock, the gamma. You can also see below the summary. It's telling you my max profit on my long call is going to be unlimited because obviously AMD can go, in theory, as high as it wants to go. Max risk 428. My net debit's 428. Gives you a break even of 89.28. So your break even is basically just the value or the strike price of your option plus the premium that you paid for the option. That's going to be your strike price. 89.28. Not your strike price, excuse me. your break-even price. And then we can see, you know, probability of profit 21%. Allocation percent is the allocation percentage of this particular position within my $100,000 portfolio. So when I'm in the system, if I hit create, it's going to add it to my portfolio. So on 7/29, you can see that this position was put into my portfolio. And this is a screenshot again of the virtual portfolio and how your position would look. It basically shows you your entry date, position type, option expiration, strike price, so on and so forth. What I really like about this is the section here, my allocation percentage within my portfolio, my risk percentage, and it will also show a return on capital once I actually either make a profit or a loss on the particular position. The next page is going to be on 8/4. So 8/4 is when the system said I would have hit my profit or when I would have got out of the trade based on that day's spike in price. So we can see entry, 7/29. But on 8/4, my position value is actually $870. So we can see I paid $428. $870 is the current value. So I'm profitable by $442. You can see my risk and my allocation is the same, but my return on capital is 103%. So basically, you're looking at return on capital, meaning how much return am I getting on the option based on the amount that I paid or the amount of risk that I'm taking on that particular option. And it's 103% because you can see position gain 442, position cost 428, so that's just barely above 100% return on that option. So that's kind of just a quick overview of the actual portfolio. It's a great tool, and I would recommend everybody use it for analysis. The next one is Deckers. So Deckers Outdoor Corp. Again, we're looking at that bullish runner. We can see here earnings, stock kind of dropped but went higher. Earnings, stock went higher. Earnings, stock went higher. And then here you can see the stock dropped and kind of went higher as well. So trade 6 doesn't show up on that chart. I didn't do that intentionally. It just doesn't show up. But you can see that was one of the losers for the trades there. But here's the debit for the trades and then the profits. Fairly quick on most of them. That's something that I like to analyze is how long am I going to be prepared to be into a particular position. Win percentage 90%, 5.46 profit factor, a profit of over $1,800. The reason I showed Deckers here is because I do find a lot of symbols come over with trade ideas or studies within the platform that I typically will never trade or haven't traded before. And that's what I like about the system is I'm like, oh, I haven't traded Deckers, but it shows a 90% win rate. So maybe I want to look at this one. And I think you'll find a lot of symbols that you haven't traded that might offer you some great opportunities to actually trade or follow in the future. Deckers, what I showed you with this one is basically we're looking at the chart. So another interesting feature within the system that you can use when you run an actual extended back test is you can look at the chart and look at the trade of how it progresses over the life of, you can look at the chart and see how your trade progresses over the life of that particular trade and throughout that chart. So here you can see the green line shows you this would be my entry date for my long option, my long call. And then after the entry and earnings, the stock continued to rise. And then this is the date that I got out of the trade. The trade summary below is basically a trade summary from the system, from Delphian, using a full back test. You can see on 7/31, which will be this date here, it would have entered into the long call. And then on 8/10, it would have exited the long call for my profit target. So my trade leg shows more detail. It shows you that I would have bought one contract of the 10/16 expiration, $230 strike at $675. And then on 8/10, I would have sold it for $940. You can see your implied volatility on your readouts. You can see your delta, your gamma, if you want to look at all that. It also shows you in your summary up above, it shows you your break-evens as well. So you can see your break-even prices based on your option that you purchased plus the actual cost or the debit that you're paying for the particular position in this instance. Again, the most optimal time frame for this Deckers, for this bullish runner, is to enter the trade in after earnings and exit 20 days after. So 20 trading days after is most optimal for this one. And again, you're going to do that only if you haven't hit your profit or your stop loss. For this bullish runner, we see a little bit more than we did on the other two, the non-mover and the vol crush. 71 trades are above 80%, 28 above 90, and 4 at 100%. So, some of those are some really great trades in there. I mean, if you're talking 32 trades above 90%, that's excellent in my opinion. Trade entry, don't forget, again, like Josh said, is to make sure you're skipping holidays and the weekends. This one, you're going to enter the trade after the earnings announcement. I always recommend, even with options that have tight bid-ask spread, I always want to use a limit order. If the bid-ask spread is really tight, I'm still using a limit order, but I kind of can see the price where they're at, and I can know if I need to make an adjustment fairly quickly or not. As with most of the other trades, once I get filled on my entry, I automatically go in there and put my exit that I tested. In this case, 25% profit. If I pay $1,000 for the option, I'm putting in exit at 1250, and I'm just putting it in GTC, and I'm walking away, because it's really good how some of these can happen pretty quickly, and you totally forgot that you had that trade in your account, and then that GTC order gets hit, and you're like, okay, great. I forgot I did that one 2 days ago, but good thing I took a profit and had that order working already, because I might have missed it if it had a decent spike up. And then always remember, for this one, the AMD exit was 16 trading days after the earnings announcement. So, these are tested at the optimal trading days, but you can test additional days and see for yourself as well. Let's see. So that's that one, the bullish runner. Are there any questions on the bullish runner? Anyone? Sorry. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, Shawn, they just want to know where the virtual portfolio was.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's look at that. So the virtual portfolio is, everybody I think mentioned it, is correct. You're going to go into your organizer and go into your virtual portfolio. And then from there, you can actually come into the system. You can add new virtual portfolios. I have a handful here. You can add as many as you want. We're looking to set some up with different groups and share portfolios with each other. And eventually we might end up having a competition to where we can see, based on certain strategies and things like that, who can increase their portfolio the best over a certain period of time, and then hopefully based on some type of risk too. But yeah, organizer, virtual portfolio. So great tool to use. One of the really cool things about this one as well is within Delphian, you can go back in time all the way to 2007. So if you want, you can go back in time, add a virtual portfolio into the system back on that particular date, and then test the strategy back on that date moving forward. So it's really cool that you can go back like that and test different strategies in the past and see how they would have worked in real time. Again, I think that's a great tool to use because it helps you figure out, okay, if it goes wrong, what would I do? How am I going to kind of manage the risks that I have on the table now, either turning it into a different strategy at a different trade, or just getting out and taking the loss, and how does that make me feel when I take that loss on that particular position, whatever it may be. So it's a great tool. The other one that I was looking at, let's see, I don't have, let me look at this real quick and see. So we're talking about the bullish runners. Let's see if this works now. So this is the bullish runners on the share drive. So we can see this is the list that Josh had worked together. So if we're talking about best trades, we're looking at some of these symbols here, and you can see, ABT, BABA. So you're looking at BABA 20 days out. You're going to exit 20 days after the earnings announcement is most optimal. Gives you an 80% win rate and a 2.76 or 2.77 profit factor. A lot of these you can look down the list and see some names that you've seen before, some that you haven't. Align Technologies, Chipotle, you're talking about Delta Airlines. Again, we got the Deckers right there. So some great symbols that you can see within this list. And yeah, we're talking about 71 symbols. So well enough symbols to look at and to use during a 90-day earnings season that you would want to test and follow and trade.